knowing where we're at with this franchise, can they emulate what Philadelphia has done to get to the Super Bowl this year? They are a run-first team. They're a team that DNA of that Eagles team is all over Arizona, directly or indirectly. Is that obtainable, or are you in a different spot because Philly is so unique because their quarterback is such a threat to be a power runner as well?
No, I don't think that like the quarterback is the true like separator for Philly. I think he does like a nice job. He had obviously his best performance in a long time yesterday, but like you're looking at, I think, the wrong reason for success if you're looking at Jalen Hurts. I mean, their trenches are some of the best in the league, what they do defensively and offensively up front. And then you give them a guy like Saquon Barkley, and he takes what they do blocking to another level.
As much as we like hate on Nick Sirianni and, he's a Pop Warner coach, Howie Roseman does do a pretty damn good job
He's the best GM in the NFL.
I mean, their roster is unbelievable, and it has been for the better part of like a decade at this point.
I just think you need to continue to use premium picks in the trenches.
Yeah.
Or really start to emphasize that. Continue to do that while you build that roster. I mean, Roseman's been at it for a decade, right? And, he's had different iterations of the Philadelphia Eagles, but they've always had a pretty solid core in place. And then if they hit on a draft, in a free agency, it takes them to, another level. Where I think the Cardinals are just kind of like scratching the surface as far as roster-wise, having a core in place and then really kind of continuing to work on the trenches. And I think once they do that, like the other pieces, the playmakers can be interchangeable. And they could get in that situation. They could find that consistent foundation and that success that follows with it.
I'll push back. The one notion I'll push back on is that Jalen Hurts always can be bailed out, and this is his own credit, with his brute force as a runner, whereas Kyler Murray does not have that option. Now, you make an argument Kyler Murray throws a better ball. I think a lot of people would. Jalen Hurts has been to 2 Super Bowls now, and he doesn't play in the NFC West, and I get that. But I just feel like, yes, I agree with you. The Cardinals, and I think this should be the theme of the offseason, forcing this team to become more physical on both sides, specifically defensively. You're forcing more turnovers, just like the Vikings did this year, and setting Sam Darnold up for success. I just feel like with Jalen Hurts, when that team gets in the red zone and they're like, the passing game's not clicking, it's almost just like Saquon and Jalen, they go back-to-back. Jalen had, 2 to 3 rushing touchdowns. Saquon had 3. They had 7 rushing touchdowns as a team. Yeah. I just think with Kyler Murray's stature, like that's never going to be the Cardinals. And again, like that's like 2 or 3 teams in the NFL. That's Baltimore, that's the Buffalo Bills, and that's the Philadelphia Eagles, that they can operate like that at quarterback. Mm-hmm. But I don't know. I feel like you have to find your own formula if you're going to put this kind of, recipe for roster building in place where you can maximize what Kyler Murray does well. And I think Kyler Murray is closer to Jared Goff in terms of the kind of offense you need to build than I think Jalen Hurts. I think Kyler Murray, conventional wisdom would suggest, short to intermediate passing game right now until you can prove that you can throw the ball downfield, and then a dominant run game, and you continue to build up that offensive line. Detroit, before they took off with Goff, Penei Sewell and Taylor Decker and Frank Ragnow, they had an elite offensive line put in place, and they drafted some elite skill players, and they just had a facilitator. That's kind of what you have to do with Kyler Murray now, in my opinion. He is. I saw a lot of people saying you got to run Kyler like Jalen Hurts. That's ridiculous. It's never going to happen.
No, he'll die.
Jalen Hurts squats like 1,000 pounds.
Yeah, he's a big, strong kid, and but then what Jalen Hurts can do with his legs, he can't necessarily do what Kyler Murray can do throwing the football.
Correct.
And I think Kyler Murray needs to show it. This upcoming season is like the separation between like what he does better than a player like, say, the caliber of Jalen Hurts. He's never going to be Josh Allen. Josh Allen's never going to be Patrick Mahomes. Like there's tiers to this, but like I think just his ability to throw his arm talent is significantly better than Hurts. He just has to prove it. Like what Hurts does do well, and it's a credit probably to his ability to run it, but he also showed in key situations, he extended plays and then got rid of the football.
Yeah.
And it was never in harm's way. He's taken incredibly great care of the football. He's valued the football, which down the stretch, unfortunately for Kyler Murray, throughout his career, he has. He just didn't do that during a crucial stretch this season for the Cardinals. And if he gets back to doing that like he did earlier in the season, I think Cardinals, especially with an improved roster, will be in a really rock solid spot.
Cardinals can make the playoffs with Kyler Murray. Like, we've never disputed that. It's happened before, and you continue to build up the roster. But, yeah, I don't know how, if you go through this offseason, you're not thinking about fortifying the line of scrimmage for this team and giving Kyler Murray one last shot to kind of put it all together. But Jalen Hurts, Claymore Jones pointed out, like, Jalen Hurts is just built completely different than Kyler Murray. Like, not all mobile quarterbacks are the same here. And, you know, their ability just to bludgeon teams up front, their quarterback is so powerful at the point of attack that they've developed this own tush-push mantra that not even the Buffalo Bills can remedy or replicate. Yeah, it's going to be an interesting offseason with the Arizona Cardinals, and it's going to be interesting, Bo, for a lot of different reasons. But specifically, like, do you feel like at this point in time, as we sit here in late January, that the Arizona Cardinals are a couple of moves this offseason from at least on paper having a comparable roster to some of these teams in the Final Four and the Final Eight? Because here's what I'll tell you.
Yeah.
I don't think Buffalo's roster is that great. I don't think Washington's roster is that great. Now, they had elite quarterback play on both those teams, but I'm going down this roster and I'm like, man, if they hit on just a couple of guys, you could close that gap between 8 or 9 wins to 11 or 12 wins pretty quickly.
No, I mean, I was talking, and I mentioned this on Friday, Aaron Schatz of FTN Fantasy, and he's a guy that does, looks through all the numbers and analytics and stats and stuff. And the Cardinals were right there, like anywhere from 12 to 14, just the slightest above average in almost every category. Like, they're a balanced team that is right there at the precipice of almost knocking at the door to kicking the door in top 10 in different areas. And if they do, they're going to be a playoff team. They're going to win games a little bit more handily than they did before. But no, you're right. Like, it's still going to take, really savvy moves this offseason to improve it. But the talent floor on this roster has been improved drastically over the last 2 years. To go and it showed itself even through like the struggles where they were tight games. Yeah. Despite some plays where they're chasing points and they're not winning the turnover battle, or they're undisciplined and they're getting flagged up. Like, they've got talent on their roster, and it's not they're not far off. No, I don't think they're far off. I mean, you can look at like the Chiefs and the Eagles and the 2 Super Bowl teams, and you're like, that still feels like really daunting. That seems like it's really far away. But as far as being one of the 7 playoff teams in the NFC, no, I don't think they're that far away. And I don't think like the step that they could potentially take next year's it's going to put them in even closer striking distance to potentially becoming one of these 2 teams that plays in the final game of the season.
We're not losing any key pieces this offseason. You're just not. Respectfully, they signed James Conner and Budda Baker already, and they're going to upgrade. And you think, Bo, you just pointed it out, like they were a possession away from beating every team in the second half. I mean, they were right there. 2-6 could have easily been, whatever it is, 6-2. You need those blue chippers, those top end players to help you finish games. Whereas this Cardinal team, 2022 would get blown out, 2023 would get blown out, right? They would compete, but with the maturation process of your 2 draft classes, you've raised the talent. Your coaching is highly thought of and is getting potentially plucked after an 8-9 season. It is the missing piece of this team getting back to the playoffs. The missing piece of winning a championship, you have to get better quarterback play from Kyler Murray, and we've evaluated that and broken that down until the cows come home. But you need a pass rusher, a defensive tackle, an off-ball linebacker, a guard that can come in and help you close out games against the NFL's best. Their playoff loss, their losses this year, they lost 9 games. Save for Carolina, every game they lost was to, I believe, a playoff team. Washington, Green Bay, Seattle. I'm sorry. Seattle had 9 wins.
Yeah, but they're hanging a banner for the best non-playoff team in the history of the NFL.
They are. You're losing to teams that on paper were projected to beat you. On paper were projected to be better than you coming into last season. On paper, a lot of people feel like have better rosters, certainly better quarterbacks for a lot of teams. So I think that's what Gannon meant at the end of the year when he was like, yeah, we have to be better. We have to get better.
Yeah.
And Kyler Murray just has to be a key cog in that